Okay, I get Illumicrate, which is a book subscription service. You get it once a month. I've gotten it maybe 5 months. I thought it would be fun to have something delivered, and you know, if you don't like them, sell them anyway or whatever. A lot of the books tend to be fantasy, which I'm not always interested in. And the idea is that you don't entirely know what book you're getting. It's very easy to find out online what the book is going to be, what the design is going to be. But I like to keep it a secret, keep it a surprise. This month's book arrived, and when I opened it, my first thought was, I don't want this. And my second thought was, why do these two look familiar? And it is because this was somewhat based on a popular Draco and Hermione fan fiction. I'm not interested in any of that, and by that I mean Draco and Hermione as a romantic pairing. I already reviewed Rose in Chains, which was another book based on a Draco Hermione fan fiction, and I hadn't planned to read this, but my hand has been forced by it being delivered to me. I'm not going to talk about the politics of fan fiction to traditionally published book again. I did that already in my other review, and this is a bit of a different situation. The fanfiction the author originally wrote is not this book. The fanfiction is still free to read, it's still up. This is a completely new story, though from the sounds of it, the plot is very similar in many ways. And the marketing does mention fanfiction a lot. I did not read the original fanfiction to compare like I did with Rose in Chains, because it didn't seem as relevant, and also I really didn't want to. The Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy is a romantic fantasy novel set in an alternative United Kingdom where there is magic, and also where the Norman conquest apparently did not happen, so the UK is still divided into tribes rather than countries. This is a slightly similar premise to a thriller alternative history book that also came out this year called Pagans. I actually have it somewhere. Here it is. It's not relevant. I just thought it was a weird coincidence. The tribes in the book are called Tiendoms, and they have magical orders within them that focus on different magic specialities, like the Halen, who specialize in healing, or the Firen, who specialize in shadow magic. That's a romantasy trope in itself. Magic in the world is called Seath. Anyone can use it, but for more advanced things like healing, you have to have a tattoo in your palm for channeling magic. It's like those tattoos in Mortal Instruments, I guess. I didn't read those books, but I did watch 40 minutes of that god-awful movie, so I am an expert. You earn the taken from joining one of their orders and studying. Overusing Seath comes with a cost, a physical symptom that is unique to each person. It can be your hands bleeding or stomach problems. Seath users also have Diafol, which are animal companions. They're the book's version of Patronuses. It seemed to be more based on demons from His Dark Materials, as they are named and they can talk and they manifest and grow up alongside humans. Diafol even means devil. I'm going to say that this is an homage to His Dark Materials and not say that it's a ripoff. Now we're getting to the first problem with the book. Everything I've just said about the world of the book was not in the text itself, but was in the supplementary material at the beginning. It's got the map of the kingdoms, apart from Ireland, which has been cut in half, bit offended, the glossary, the house list, the order list, and a pronunciation guide. I don't like the prevalence of these glossaries and character lists in books now. It's often being used to deliver chunks of exposition. You will not understand this story unless you read the glossary and the explanation of the orders. But this is information you should be naturally working into the actual text of the book. You should only be optionally referring to a map and a glossary and a guide. It should be used for refreshing your memory because something is complex. It should not be instrumental to the plot of the book. Also, when there's this much stuff, it seems like overcompensating. It says, "Please take me seriously. This is an epic fantasy book, I swear." But this isn't the Silmarillion. We shouldn't need all this. This is not the only example of clumsy exposition either. The concept of Seath is explained by a character looking at these signs that have been painted on the wall of a waiting room and then reading them in his mind. They are these big, awkward-looking bubbles of text, and it looks ridiculous on the page. As a positive, I would say the naming system, which seems to be a mix of Old English and Celtic and Nordic words, is fine. It shows some research. I think it shows some interest in history, unlike Rose in Chains, where the author seemed to be playing some sort of word association game in order to come up with names for people and things. The story of the book starts with Osric, a member of the Firen assassin order. Osric has an injury that has caused his Seath channels to be damaged. He's recommended to go and visit Orion, who is a Halen, basically a doctor, to get medical treatment. But the Halen and the Freyan are mortal enemies, and Orion is disgusted at the idea of treating an assassin and indirectly helping him murder more people. The order system seems like a bit of a contrived way to get them to be enemies to lovers. But yeah, Orion is right, and she shouldn't help him. I don't understand the fantasy obsession with making main characters assassins. with no exploration of the morals of killing for payment. I think the word assassin now has enough cool connotations that people forget that assassins are mass murderers. The fact that they are doing it for money doesn't make it better. It just makes them spineless, scummy murderers. I don't want to get controversial, but I think people who kill others for monetary gain are bad. Orion refuses to treat Osric, but the Hayland headquarters have a funding issue. They have been unable to raise the 20 million shillings, maybe? In my notes, I've just put coinage of the realm. Let me look at the book. 20 million thrimsas, whatever. They have been unable to raise 20 million thrimsa that is needed in order to fund the research into an inoculation for Platt's pox, an epidemic that is affecting the children of the Tiandem. So he bribes her by saying he will anonymously donate the money she needs in exchange for her treating him. Orion was doing research on old magic and how it's affected by the moon, and this could possibly cure Osric, but she says she has since given up on the research and curing him is impossible. But she will try to get the money. So the middle section of the book is the two of them going to different magic hotspots or Seath hotspots on different phases of the moon and doing rituals in order to try and slow or reverse the degradation of his Seath channels. The magic system in the book is trying to make magic seem scientific. The author talks a lot about STEM in the Illumicrate exclusive author letter at the beginning of the book. She's giving it her best shot at putting women in STEM in the book, but it is a fantasy novel. Orion is not a woman in STEM, she is a magician. They have to do all their meetings in secret as they're not meant to be interacting, so they have to communicate through their deifical animal companion things. The deifical only really pop up when someone needs to deliver a message to another character. It just seems to be a way to work around the fact that none of these people have smartphones. They're not an important part of the story. It's the same in Rose and Chains. These ex-Harry Potter fanfic authors really want to keep the magic animals, but they have nothing to do with them. The book is dual point of view, switching between Orion and Osric, and they are typical tropey romance novel characters with a fantasy twist. She is an uptight workaholic. He is a charismatic, arrogant bad boy. It's very dialogue heavy, but when it wants to be serious, there is some nice prose. It's occasionally poetic, but the book is mainly interested in banter and bickering. Just people exchanging little insults to each other. It's mildly funny at times, but it's mostly pretty lame. Insults like calling someone a moppish crouton or saying he has a face like a burst sofa. A lot of people who like Harry Potter seem to have found the line, "You have the emotional maturity of a teaspoon," incredibly funny, and they're just desperately trying to recreate it by writing things like, "You have the imagination of an aubergine." That's an actual quote. The writing style is, if I'm being charitable, I'm going to say verbose. Uncharitably, I'm going to say it's bordering on word salad, or I would compare it to that scene in Friends where Joey uses a thesaurus on every single word of a letter he's writing. For example, I will read Osric's description. And this is by no means the worst example of this in the book. His hood fell back, exposing silver white hair, winsomely tousled and pale skin. His features, Orion decided, suited him. Insolent and sardonic. The various scars that pitted his face weren't surprising given his profession. They added something savage to a countenance that was otherwise patrician. In no way the worst example of this kind of language in the book. She's aiming for Austen. She's aiming for P.G. Wodehouse. She's very much landing on Frasier. I fully believe that she knows a lot of words, but her enthusiasm for putting all of them in this book is sometimes a detriment to the flow of the writing. There is a focus on sounding smart above sounding good. Mark Twain famously maybe said, "Don't use a $5 word when a 50-cent word will do." I don't always agree with this. A precise language is good, but using an obscure word when you have a perfectly fine, widely known word available, which means the exact same thing, really doesn't add anything to the writing. This and all the random French, mon Dieu. All this aside, for the first 50 pages-ish, I was kind of enjoying it. I had some problems with the pacing and the exposition, but it was kind of fun to read. The first signs of trouble were about 52 pages in. They were meeting in secret, and Orion tells Osric to meet her at the... I'll just read it. "Take a waystone to the Princess and the Fool in Hessel Head. You'll see signs for a clinic for acute buttock folliculitis." "A clinic for what?" "Spotty bums," said the DFO. "Follow the signs. Orion will be there." This wasn't funny, but I felt like a little bit of secondhand embarrassment for the author, so I was willing to move on and pretend it didn't happen. But then "spotty bums" was referenced like 4 more times. It was like she heard me not laugh, so kept on repeating herself to get a reaction. Stop saying "spotty bums." Shortly after this, there was another scene that caused me concern. for the direction the book was taking. Orion and Osric visit a hot spring in order to perform a ritual, but the hot spring is now a public bath in the basement of a brothel called the Randy Unicorn. I don't want to sound like I'm being prudish or I'm clutching my pearls at the idea of them visiting a brothel. I wasn't shocked by anything sexual that was happening. I was shocked by how abruptly and overwhelmingly juvenile the book became. There's a lot of British humour, and I don't mean that in a dry, droll, Oscar Wilde way. Yes, I know he's Irish. I mean it in a low-rent, slapstick, pantomime way. The crudeness really ramps up from here on out. You're reading a conversation between Orion and Osric. It'd be interesting and well-written enough. And I'd be thinking, you know what, this is actually okay. And it would be interrupted by somebody saying Sir Fartingtons or Knob Gobble or talking about hemorrhoids or whatever. The juxtaposition between the quite pretentious writing and the constant juvenile, vulgar, unfunny jokes was like whiplash. For example, in the middle of the book, Osric is unable to use his Seath and sends his Deaful to Orion to ask her to come to his house. While this is happening, 3 people try and break into the Haylan Hall, and she cannot leave while it's being investigated. Eventually, she is able to sneak out, get to his house, and cure the magical blockage in his Seath channel. While she's there, she also asks him if he knows anything about who might have been trying to break into the Haylan Hall, and asks him to investigate the break-in in exchange for treating him the next time he has a blockage in his Seath channel. They're also talking about his house and the art he has. The dialogue is quite nice. This was a scene I was enjoying briefly. There's some advancement in the plot. There's some mystery. Who was trying to break into the Haylan building? What was their motivation? But then Orion has to hide in a cupboard because Osric's colleague has shown up drunk to make a lot of awful puns. I was baffled as to why this was happening in the middle of what was an otherwise pretty good scene. It just wouldn't end, and it felt like self-sabotage. Why are you interrupting a chapter that was quite well written for some nonsense where an irrelevant character makes jokes about pubic hair for 4 pages? It was like midway through writing, the author got possessed by the ghost of a 13-year-old boy. Another problem that ties into the humour is the book's tone. Its general attitude to death and murder is really odd. Osric kills people all the time, randomly and violently. He has no moral problems with it, and it's not like they are all bad people. He's just being paid to do it and doesn't care. He must kill about 100 people in the story, and he never feels any remorse. It's just portrayed as him being like a devilish rogue. Like, no, he's a murderer. And if Orion is as caring and moral as she's said to be, she shouldn't be able to get over the fact that he's an assassin as easily as she does. I have no moral objection to dark romance or fictional evil people being likable and fun and funny. I'm a big fan of like Interview with the Vampire and Hannibal and stuff like that. The problem is when it's time for Osric to be an assassin, it's a wacky murder comedy. When it's time to read about the children dying, it's grim, gritty drama, and life is precious. It's like having its cake and eating it too. We are not meant to have any sympathy for the people Osric kills, even though many of them are innocent people, but we are meant to feel sympathy for victims of the pox. Like, if these kids did survive and got a little bit older, Osric would feel absolutely nothing while indiscriminately killing them. And we're also meant to take seriously Orion's like moral objection to him being a killer and her internal conflict, even though she seems like she'd be able to move on from it pretty quickly. Surprisingly far into the book, the plot kicks in. Osric follows some leads and finds a man, Scobe, who knows something about the attempted break into the Haylan headquarters. Osric goes to intimidate him, and Orion shows up undercover as a sex worker for another deeply unfunny scene as they covertly interrogate him. He points them towards Lord Wesley of Wessex. Lord Wesley of Wessex, conveniently, previously asked the Haylan to visit him, so they see this as an opportunity to infiltrate his house and search for clues. So Orion and Osric, disguised as their guard, go to his house. Lord Wesley has asked a Haylan to come to his house ostensibly to care for his daughter who is sick, but really he wanted the opportunity to be able to intimidate a Haylan into telling him who the mysterious donor behind their Platt's pox inoculation was. If you remember, it was Osric. He let slip that he was actually blocking anyone from donating to the Haylan's research into the cure for the pox. And in the cellar, Osric has found a bottle of what he thought was scotch, but actually turns out to be an incubating pox pathogen. So, Lord Wesley of Wessex has been spreading the pox, possibly to create Dryar, because the Kingdom of Wessex is at war with neighbouring Kent. Are you confused by what I just said? So was I. You need to have read all of the material at the beginning of the book and inspected the map to understand what is going on. Once again, I shouldn't have to read all the supplementary material to understand what is happening in the book. After this, a hit is put out against the Heylan. One of Osric's colleagues is sent to randomly kill one of them, and Osric is worried it might be Orianne. So he murders the assassin and gets stabbed in the process. He goes to Orianne's parents' house to find her, and he stays there while she nurses him back to health. This is where the bulk of the romantic subplot of the book comes into focus. This is a slow burn romance. They make it very clear in the marketing and the blurb and the interviews. There's a lot of emphasis put on this, probably because they don't want people to be disappointed when there aren't sex scenes in the first book. They don't even really acknowledge to themselves that they're attracted to each other until quite near the end. But even though it's meant to be a slow burn, this doesn't feel like a gradual thawing of their emotions. It feels like they hate each other for a long time, they have maybe one conversation, and then they're suddenly attracted to each other. The parents are throwing a party. Osric is still ill, so he watches it from a balcony until Orianne comes up to join him. They talk and bond. They are both now reluctantly attracted to each other. Osric tells Orianne about his father and killing him because he killed Osric's mother. They are sharing their traumas. They kiss, but they both think it's for show because Orianne's old, almost boyfriend is watching. Is it for show? Is it real? And they can't be together because it's forbidden. This is like the killing blow for the book, I'd say. The enemies to lovers plot, which, let's be honest, is the main selling point of the book. It's literally called The Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy. Is uncompelling. If only in spirit, it is based on fan fiction that had a pre-made universe, pre-made characters with a pre-made conflict. Is any of that stuff in Harry Potter good? Up for debate, but it's pretty extensive. The world of the I keep on almost saying the unbearable lightness of being. The world of the irresistible urge to fall from your enemy is not extensive, it's not complex, and it's not explored very much. The author did not create a universe and then write a romance about how two characters would navigate falling in love in it. They wrote a forbidden enemies to lovers romance and needed to contrive reasons to keep them apart. The world is just a means to an end. It's a lot more interesting to imagine the complexities of a forbidden romance if you have a rich, complex world to explore it in that's already made for you. This is why people like enemies to lovers fan fiction, but why these books so often fail. To feel invested in the internal struggle they both have about being attracted to each other, you need to understand the politics of their orders. You need to be able to feel the weight of the society they are living in, the way it functions, the expectations on them, how it has affected their character, their personalities, their morals, and why it is keeping them apart. It should feel like the conflict between these orders is like an insurmountable wall between them that they have to overcome. But in the irresistible urge to blah 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 blah, it feels about like this. It feels about like this high. They could just step over. It's gonna be a duology, and maybe it will be more fleshed out. But there was no satisfying story arc for this book. The plot seems to kick in with about 100 pages left. Ending feels like you're stopping in the middle of a thought. There was a lot of meandering and tangents and attempts to be witty. I didn't like this, but it wasn't awful. I think the specter of fan fiction looms over this book and is making it worse. Brigitte Knightley was probably kind of locked in to writing an enemies to lovers romance in the vein of her famous fan fiction, and it just doesn't work because the world of Harry Potter is not there as a springboard, and what has been written to fill in the gaps just isn't very explored, and she probably hasn't been given enough time to do it. And there are too many dick jokes. It's like a third of the book is dick jokes. Take some of them out, replace it with plot. The general consensus online seems to be that this is not as good as Rose in Chains, which to me is insane. Compared to Rose in Chains, this is Jane Eyre. This was an actual book. Just a book I didn't like very much. I think Brigitte Knightley can write. I just have questions about some of her writing choices and her focus on humor. And also I question the publisher. The time between viral fanfic and published debut novel seems very short. And I know the reason for this. The publishers want to get these books out while the fanfiction still has some buzz and is still in people's minds. And I think it's laudable given the fact that she probably was on a pretty big time crunch, that she didn't just change the names of her fan fiction and publish it, but actually wrote something new. Once again, like Rose in Chains, so much effort has been put into this book as a product with all different covers and sprayed edges and varieties and editions, but not enough time has been given to editing the contents of the book. Just a very weird reading experience. I can't recommend it, but I don't feel great about saying that.